fra Denver, Colorado, professor i sort is, Jason Box. Ugens første gæst er amerikaner, men han har slået sig ned her i København, hvor han arbejder for Danmarks Geologiske Undersøgelser. Han besøgte Grønland for første gang tilbage i 1994, så han har siden, altså i mere end 20 år, på mere end 24 forskellige ekspeditioner forsket i klimaet. I 2013 der forudså han før nogen andre en dramatisk afsmeltning af isen på Grønland, og han fik ret. Her er han, mine damer og herrer, professor Jason Box. Jason! Now, one easy question before we begin for real. What mood would you like to leave us all in at the end of this conversation?
Optimistic.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, we have to have some optimism. We're facing a big challenge with climate change, and the good news is there's lots of opportunities for prosperity.
All right, so there is good news, but there is bad news as well. When you decided back in 1994 sort of to move your life in this direction, when you went to Greenland for the first time, did you see it as a sort of existential quest? Did you say to yourself, this is the future of the world that will be decided here?
No, I just went to Greenland because I love snow and I went for the adventure. And it was only 8 years later that I realized that this place had global significance.
This was in 2002. Why? What happened then?
In 2002, it was realized that the meltwater that's draining down through the ice sheet causes it to speed up like 100% in the summertime. So suddenly there was an instant connection between climate warming and the loss of this ice sheet.
Right, and so here we are talking about the ice sheet changing, and there are things there that accelerate essentially the effects of global warming.
Yeah, you know, over the last 20 years that I've been observing this place, we have uncovered several multiplying effects that we didn't know about even just a few years ago. And so these multiplying effects, they keep piling up, and that makes it possible for us to see a very rapid response. It's already underway, so we know that it's happening. But what makes me more concerned is the other surprises that we have in store.
All right,
that we don't
so
know.
Basically you are saying when if we go back to 2002, sort of the basic physics of this were not, that novel. They were easy to understand, but you were saying that over the years you have found a number of factors that accelerate the things that are already happening.
Yeah, before that, the bed of the Greenland ice sheet was frozen, and what I was taught in 1994 was that it would take 40,000 years for this thing to melt because of global warming. And then those numbers have gone much sooner, and now we're looking at significant sea level rise within our children's lifetimes. Sea level rise that threatens coastal cities around the world.
All right, here you are, sir. This is you on something called dark ice. What is dark ice?
Yeah, this was a summer where there was like 2 months without snowfall, and you can see how dark the surface gets. It's because the accumulation of pollution and also algae. So actually a lot of what you see there, darkness, is growing biological material.
All right, so this is supposed to be white. If you had been there, 20 years earlier, how would it have looked?
Yeah, I mean, when we have long summers like this, the surface can get a lot darker, and that process alone doubles the melting on the lower part of Greenland. So this is one of the multiplying effects.
Here we go, more of this, the dark ice. And so essentially what is happening here is that once the ice begins to melt, it no longer is as reflective as it is when it is proper white.
Yeah, these Arctic summers is 24-hour sunlight. Here, this is absorbing more than twice the energy that fresh snow would be absorbing.
Now, back in 2009, of course, you made a prediction that not everyone believed in. What did you predict?
Well, this largest ice shelf in northern Greenland, the largest in the Arctic, we saw a crack forming on it, and I brought an expedition up there. It was just a matter of time till this ice shelf went. That was in 2009. And it didn't happen in 2009, it happened in 2010.
Right.
But we got some measurements installed, and the day that it broke was actually very warm weather, which made us think that there's a connection between warm weather and the loss of ice shelves.
So in 2009, you say this will break off, this will happen, and how did people respond when you went out and made that prediction?
Well, there was some skepticism because it's hard to predict the future, but this prediction was pretty easy because this crack was just getting bigger.
And then, of course, a couple of years ago, you predicted as well that the ice would melt a lot faster than a lot of people thought at the time. Once again, you were right. What is happening right now?
Well, what's happening is the snow is warming up. In that case, it was clear it would melt over the whole surface of Greenland because there was no more cold remaining in the snow. So it just took another summer like that, and that's what happened.
All right, now, when we speak about this issue, a lot of people will say, well, maybe global warming is a fact of life. Maybe this is happening. Certainly a lot of people would call it undeniable and say that it has been so for many years. At the same time, these are immensely complex issues. It's one thing to say these things are happening. It's another to say we know what caused them. Are you in doubt as to what are the causes of this?
There's no doubt in the scientific community about the causes of climate warming. Human activity is responsible for about 4/5. So the majority, humans have become a dominant force of nature by altering the chemistry of the atmosphere. And that extra layers of blanket on the atmosphere is heating the oceans. That's the big story, really, because warming oceans, that's also undercutting the ice.
But when we are dealing with these issues, and they are immensely complicated because it's about the interplay between the glaciology, essentially, and what's happening in the oceans. It's interplay with physics and a lot of other disciplines. Aren't we talking about things that are so complex that making these predictions or these analytical models is almost impossible to do with any kind of certainty?
Well, we can look at the past, and what we see is confirms a lot of what we are thinking. And we have a lot of high-quality measurements now. I mean, it's different today. Denmark has a network of stations called PROMICE. It's something we can be very proud of, that Denmark has made that commitment to observing and monitoring Greenland so that authoritative numbers about Greenland are coming out of Denmark. And so we really have our finger on the pulse of this thing.
And you are saying essentially the system, what you've seen in Greenland over 20 years, is that nature is more sensitive than you thought. What do you mean by that?
Right, you mentioned interconnection, and that's our thinking is emerging now that we're done kind of looking at the individual pieces of this puzzle. We can put them together into a picture, which is, it's about interconnection. It's ice-ocean, it's ice-atmosphere interactions, and there's multipliers between all of those. The warming ocean undercuts the glacier, it flows faster, leads to more water coming in and warming internally. There's more than 10 multiplying factors that we've just uncovered in the last 10 years.
And you are saying that you are most concerned at this moment with irreversibility. What do you mean
Right,
by
that's
that?
the $10 trillion question. At what point do we lose Greenland? We know today it's beyond its threshold, but if the melt rates stayed at the same level as it is...
What does that mean, beyond the threshold?
Well, we're losing 300 billion tons of ice from Greenland every year. That's enough to give all the people on Earth 100 liters of water a day. But at that rate, it still takes more than 10,000 years to lose that ice. What my concern is, going forward, there are physics that we know about where it gets beyond a point of no return. That's thinning. If there's enough thinning of this thing, then it's in a warmer part of the atmosphere. You can imagine it's just warmer. And you cannot recover that without an ice age.
So is that what we are dealing with essentially now for the past 20 years? If there's been a consensus as to this issue and the importance of it, and we said we're doing this, we had the Paris Accords in December, we are acting on it, we feel we know what's going on in order to sort of prevent the planet from irreversible damage. You are saying if some of these interconnections are true, if this is what we see happening, we might not make it with the plans we have in place. Right.
It's a matter of time, and we're kind of out of time now. We need to make some big transformations, and the science is telling us that we have very little time to reverse this. There are some kind of rays of hope, though, that it's not just doom and gloom, because we still have some time.
All right, so there's some time left. You said that one of the things that you're most concerned with is what you're saying, the shutdown of the North Atlantic current. What is that?
Well, Greenland melting has been flooding the North Atlantic with fresh water, and that's been slowing down the Gulf Stream circulation. And right now it's record cold in the North Atlantic at the same time that the world is record warm. And that is creating stronger storms, and that's affecting us in Northwestern Europe today. So this is an example of an impact that we don't have to wait for. The melting on Greenland seems to be affecting our weather today, making storms stronger. The UK just had record rainfall over and over again. You've been hearing about this. We're kind of sheltered a bit here in Denmark, but we expect stronger windstorms.
And there's no doubt in your mind that these extreme weather events are related to global warming.
Well, there's a lot we still need to study about this record cold in the North Atlantic, but Greenland melting explains more than 2/3 of that. So I'm sure about Greenland's role in that.
Now, you made the point when you went to Greenland for the first time 20 years ago. You said it was not an existential quest. You didn't know how important this was going to be. How do you feel personally about this? Because you've followed this development now for 20 years. Do you feel that this is a losing race?
We've wasted a lot of time in the last decades debating the science, and I think that's kind of crazy because considering the risks, considering what we can lose by flooding coastlines, we should kind of, if we're going to be wrong, we should be wrong on the caution side. But the science keeps telling us that this is a legitimate problem.
This is a big question. Have scientists in general in the scientific community, have you held back a little too much?
Yeah, that's called reticence. Scientists don't want to be wrong in public. They're trained to be right. They're trained to deliver facts, and it's really, so that holds them back. And because I've got a kid and stuff, I've kind of really come off the fence a few times and attracted attention just by using sometimes strong language to describe this problem, because it really is a threat.
So you're saying scientists have been so worried about saying something that might not be true or be seen to be politicizing that you might have held back a little bit in terms of actually describing reality?
I mean, that's normal for scientists. And when you need a unanimous signature on a climate report, like we keep delivering these 1,000-page reports, those need to be unanimously signed across all the UN. And what that does is produce very conservative numbers.
Professor Box, when is the next time you're going back to Greenland?
I'm trying to take a year off, but lots of people are inviting me there. This would be year number 25.
It's not really the time to take a year off right now when you look at climate change, is it?
Well, you know, we have our PROMICE network of stations, promice.org.
Yeah.
Check it out. Like, the world can go and check the temperature of Greenland from the comfort of their home.
But we're going to be talking about this next 5 years in a way we haven't done for the past 10 years, aren't we?
Yeah, you know, this issue is really coming up, and it's kind of invading on, there's lots of important issues in the world, and this one arguably is the biggest.
All right. Here's the simple rule. You move a seat, you don't go anywhere. Jason Box, ladies and gentlemen.